a deadly plague was spreading throughout northeast regions of China. Within 4 months, 60,000 people died. Sound familiar? The year was 1910. 1910. The Chinese government then recruited one of its best physicians, Dr. Wu, who had studied infectious diseases overseas. And as a result of Dr. Wu's efforts, it was determined that the plague of 1910 was spread by infected droplets that humans sneezed and coughed into the air. And so Dr. Wu designed a face covering with padded layers of cotton and gauze with strings so that the user could secure it to their head. In effect, Dr. Wu had designed the modern-day face mask. And at that time, over 100 years ago, he urged everyone to wear a mask. And then the Chinese government not only mandated that, but also other restrictions. And after 4 months, the plague ended. You know, in our own present day, because of the pandemic, we have masks. You know, when we wear them, when we don't wear them, we have some options in life still at the moment. There are times when we have to wear a mask. You know, I went to the doctors the other day. You got to wear a mask. I went to the eye doctors. And if you wear glasses, you know, you have the glasses, you have the mask on. They say, read that chart, and they say, my glasses are all fogged up. But we worked through it. We worked through it. For years, though, prior to the pandemic, we've seen many of our Asian brothers and sisters wearing masks. You know, you've seen that. And we might ask why, but we just go on and we don't think too much about it. But there is a reason behind it. Because our Asian brothers and sisters see it as a matter of social responsibility and caring for one another. Again, we're in a different place, but where we're going to go and where we're coming from, who knows? But some of the things we have gone through maybe are reflected in the gospel today. You know, how many people say, wow, this mask thing, you know, I just can't live with this. It's a burden to me. The gospel talks about crosses to bear. You know, crosses that lead us to something better and good, to life, and in the case of faith, eternal life. And so maybe sometimes we need to see some of these things we're asked to do for a while as a temporary cross to bear. The president the other day, I'm not here to be political, but the president the other day talked about vaccinations, you know. I'm sure many of us, if not all of us here, are vaccinated. But he was talking to the other 20-25% of our population. Could you consider doing it with the right facts? And that's part of the problem too. We have facts and thoughts all over the place, and you wonder, I wonder sometimes, you know, where are we going with this? What's the direction? You know? The crosses we bear. You know, several months ago, I thought that we were starting to turn the corner and taking some small steps, but ever slowly creeping towards some normalcy. But I guess like many things in life, we think things are going to happen and we hope for many things, and it just doesn't materialize at that moment. Because it seems that we've taken a step or two backwards, especially as we hear about these different variants that seem to be developing. And through it all, we become weary. For good reasons, we become weary in many ways. And then the pastor, with the staff, we planned this reopening weekend. Well, should we go ahead with it? Was one of the questions. And the answer was yes. Because the church never closed. The church never closed. The living and the working, if you will, of the gospel of Jesus Christ continue to take place in your homes and in your relationships with other people and through the working that this church supports or does every day. And so it seemed to me that we were using and are using the wrong words when we say reopening. Maybe this weekend is meant to be a renewal of our faith, a renewal of that call to live the gospel daily, a renewal of our baptismal promises to love God, love neighbor, and be faithful disciples of Jesus. You know, one of the things we were going to do at the beginning of Mass, and I nixed it on Friday, we were going to do a sprinkling rite. You know, we're going to go around throwing holy water on everybody. And I said, I just don't feel it was the right moment to do that, to use that symbol of baptism. We don't even have holy water in the baptismal fount yet. And so we stepped back from that. But it doesn't mean if by not doing something, we can't live our faith. You know, in the gospel today, we hear this interplay, if you will, between Peter and Jesus. Peter does not like what he hears Jesus talking about, especially the stuff about Jesus' suffering and death. Doesn't like that. So Peter, being Peter, is ready. God bless Peter. He's ready to help Peter, or to help Jesus, change his way of thinking. He's ready, Peter, to talk some sense into Jesus. And you almost could see this happening. You know, they're walking down the road or whatever they're doing, and Peter says, "Hey, Jesus, you know, we're good friends, but this stuff about suffering and dying, this doesn't make sense to me. And I don't think it makes sense to most people. You know, we got to go in a different direction." You might say to people, well, there's days when it won't be perfect. But Jesus, you know, that's not what Jesus said. And so Jesus, being Jesus, gets a little upset with Peter. He goes, "Get behind me, Satan." He says to Peter, you're thinking like human beings. That's a bad thing, but you're not thinking like God. He says, "Peter," as he put his arm around him probably and said, "Peter, we got to do the things of God, the things of God." You know, in that message of 2,000 years ago relates to us today, because like the apostles, the disciples of years past, we too, like them, are on a journey. We're on a journey of life and a journey of faith. We're on a journey with one another. Yes, with our family and our friends, but whether we know one another or not, we're on this common journey together. But most importantly, we're also on this journey with Jesus. One person who was reflecting upon the gospel today made the point of saying the disciples of Jesus and their journey with Jesus was meant to be an intense experience of spiritual formation. Spiritual formation. And that applies to us today. You know, every weekend when we listen to the scriptures, when we reflect upon them, what's the message? What's the message? How are we being formed to be that disciple of Jesus today, as a person, as a family, church community? You know, the past 18 months have been different. They've been different. And you could reflect upon that yourself. But what have we learned in those 18 months? What or how have we changed in the last 18 months? More than putting on those 15 COVID pounds. You know, you hear people say, you know, we were real busy before COVID came. And then we had to stay home. Activities were canceled. Couldn't go out. And so what did they do? What did they do? Families had meals together. People had, quote unquote, a movie night or family night. People reached out to other people, family members and neighbors and who knows who, to say, how you doing? How you doing? There have been moments where people have said, well, I can't wait till we get back to normal. I'm a firm believer that, yeah, we'll go back to some of the things we did before. There's no doubt about that, and that's good. That's okay. But maybe some of the things of the past need to be changed a little bit. Maybe we need to be changed a little bit. Where are we going? What's the new direction that the pandemic, that God is calling us to? How will we do the God thing and continue to do the God thing? You know, during the pandemic, you know, we've done very good things here in the parish because of you, whether you're watching from home or whether you're here in church. We've continued to live that gospel message. But it doesn't mean we have to do it the same old, same old. And we'll be looking into that as we get into 2022. How do we continue to live the gospel? How do we do the God thing? The God thing. Not my thing, not the human thing alone, but the God thing. Finally, this morning, I'd like to end with a story from the newspaper that I read several months ago. And at the time, when I read it, I said, this will be a great story to tell as the beginning of my homily on, quote unquote, this reopening weekend. And this is the story. In June, a woman named Pat Curry spotted bite-sized, wood-fired, rotisserie chicken with portobello mushrooms at her local Costco. And she felt giddy. After a 14-month hiatus, free samples were back. Praise Jesus. She explained the free samples were one of the markers that told me we had turned a corner in the pandemic. Well, obviously, things have changed since June of 2021, this September. But we're moving forward, living our faith, growing in love of God and others, and hopefully continuing to live the words of faith through our actions of faith. Just know there will be free samples someday at Costco and BJ's. Don't fret. But until then, we're called to be free. Free. Free to do the God thing. Every day, at home and at work, at school, in our neighborhoods, our parish, and beyond.